Sarah never desired her great-aunt's sprawling Victorian mansion. It loomed, a shadow from her childhood filled with unsettling memories. Yet here she was, key in hand, inheritor of its shadowed halls and dusty secrets. The house sighed as she pushed open the door, a low groan of wood and time. The air inside was stale, heavy with the perfume of decay and forgotten things. Sunlight dared not penetrate the boarded-up windows. Shadows clung to the corners, thick and impenetrable. An unsettling chill settled over her despite the summer heat. It was in the floorboards beneath her feet, a coldness that seeped into her bones. This house, she realized, held on to its past with an almost desperate fervor. Each room was a portrait of neglect, shrouded in dust covers and the silence of decades. Yet, there was an underlying hum to the silence, a whisper of movement just beyond perception. It was most pronounced in the attic, a cavernous space under a peaked roof. Cobwebs, thick as gauze, shrouded forgotten treasures and shrouded figures, dozens of them, each perched on shelves, nestled in dusty armchairs or propped against the wall. Porcelain dolls, their painted eyes glinted in the sliver of light that pierced through a crack in the boarded window. They were eerily lifelike, each with a unique expression frozen on its porcelain face. A shiver danced down Sarah's spine. A child's laughter echoed faintly, bouncing off the rafters, or maybe it was just the wind, she couldn't be sure. Days turned into weeks as Sarah settled into her unsettling inheritance. She tried to ignore the strange occurrences, the flickering shadows, the soft whispers that seemed to follow her from room to room. The dolls, however, proved impossible to ignore. Their eyes seemed to follow her every move. One doll in particular unnerved her. It sat on a rocking chair by the window, its porcelain face frozen in a disconcertingly lifelike scowl. She could have sworn she'd left it facing the wall. Now its milky eyes stared directly at her, her breath hitched in her throat. Was it her imagination, or had the rocking chair moved slightly? Turning away, she hurried out of the room, the echo of her own footsteps doing little to soothe her growing unease. The tapping started subtly, a light rhythmic sound against her bedroom window. At first, Sarah dismissed it as a branch, swaying in the breeze. But the wind was still, the night air thick and silent, except for the tapping. It grew more insistent, more rapid, like impatient fingers drumming against the glass. Heart pounding, she crept towards the window. The moonlight cast long, distorted shadows across the lawn. There, beneath her window, stood a doll. The same doll that had been in the rocking chair. Moonlight glinted off its glassy eyes, and for a fleeting, terrifying moment, Sarah could have sworn she saw a flicker of malice in their depths. She stumbled back from the window, her pulse racing. Sleep that night was a distant dream, replaced by a chilling certainty. The dolls were not content to remain confined to the attic. They were watching, waiting. Desperate for answers, Sarah delved into the history of the house. Local whispers spoke of her great-aunt Edith, a recluse who had vanished without a trace. Edith, they said, was obsessed with her dolls, believing them to be vessels for something more sinister. Old journals, yellowed with age, confirmed the rumors. Edith's words, scrawled in a spidery hand, spoke of ancient rituals, of imbuing life into inanimate objects, of a darkness that whispered from beyond the veil. The dolls, she wrote, were the key. Sarah shuddered, dropping the journal as if it burned. Was this madness, or had her great-aunt stumbled onto something truly terrifying? The tapping on the window grew more insistent, more demanding. Edith's words echoed in Sarah's mind. The dolls were the key. But the key to what? Deep within the shadowed recesses of the attic, Sarah unearthed a locked chest tucked away behind a decaying armoire. The air around it hung heavy, thick with a palpable sense of dread. The lock, rusted but firm, yielded to a heavy iron key found on a tarnished chain around her neck, a piece of her inheritance she hadn't noticed before. Inside, nestled amongst yellowed lace and brittle fabrics, lay a leather-bound diary. Edith's diary. The brittle pages crackled with age, the ink faded but legible. Each entry was more disturbing than the last, chronicling Edith's descent into obsession. The dolls, she wrote, were no mere playthings. They were vessels, crafted to house spirits, to bind them to this world. She wrote of forbidden rituals, of whispers from beyond the veil, and of a growing darkness that pulsed within the heart of the house. One entry in particular sent a shiver down her spine. The ritual is complete. They are awake. They are hungry. Below the entry, a chilling sketch of a doll, its eyes black and malevolent, staring out from the page. Armed with Edith's diary and a growing sense of dread, Sarah decided to confront the darkness that permeated her ancestral home. She gathered the dolls in the attic, their porcelain faces gleaming in the flickering candlelight, their painted eyes seemingly watching her every move. Following the instructions in Edith's diary, she drew a circle of salt around herself and the dolls. The air grew thick, the silence heavy with anticipation. She began to recite the words, her voice trembling at first, then growing in strength as the ritual took hold. A cold wind swept through the attic, extinguishing the candles and plunging the room into darkness. Panic welled up inside her, threatening to overwhelm her. Then a whisper, faint at first, then growing louder, swirling around her, chilling her to the bone. The dolls, she realized, were no longer inanimate. Their heads turned, their glassy eyes locking onto her with an unnerving intensity. The whispers coalesced into voices, a chorus of whispers emanating from the dolls themselves. They spoke of their former lives, of their untimely deaths, of their rage and resentment at being trapped in these porcelain prisons. Edith, they hissed, had promised them freedom, power, but she had betrayed them, leaving them trapped between worlds. One voice rose above the others, filled with a chilling malice. It belonged to the doll with the scowling face, the one that had haunted her from the beginning. It spoke of vengeance, of a debt that needed to be repaid, a debt that Sarah now owed. Terror threatened to consume her, but she clung to a sliver of defiance. She wouldn't be their puppet. She wouldn't let Edith's madness consume her as well. The scowling doll lunged, its porcelain hand reaching for her, its grip surprisingly strong. She cried out as a surge of icy cold shot up her arm, a feeling of unimaginable violation. The room spun, the whispers growing louder, morphing into a cacophony of screams and pleas and promises of power. Her vision blurred, the dolls' faces swimming before her, their painted eyes burning with a malevolent light. Edith's voice echoed in her mind, a chilling blend of madness and desperation. "The power is yours," it whispered. Seductive and terrifying, join us, become one with us. The pressure on her mind intensified, threatening to shatter her resolve. But even as darkness threatened to consume her, a flicker of defiance remained. She wouldn't be controlled. She wouldn't be another one of Edith's victims. Summoning every ounce of strength, Sarah ripped the scowling doll from her arm and hurled it against the wall. It shattered on impact, its porcelain form exploding in a shower of shards. A collective gasp, a shriek of rage and despair echoed through the attic as the voices abruptly ceased. The pressure on her mind vanished, leaving behind a hollow ache. The room was silent now, the only sound her own ragged breathing and the pounding of her heart. She stumbled back, away from the shattered remains of the doll, away from the circle of salt, away from the other dolls, their painted eyes now vacant and lifeless. She fled the attic, the weight of their gazes heavy on her back. The house seemed to sigh, the air lighter as if a great weight had been lifted, but the sense of unease lingered, a chilling reminder of the darkness that still clung to its shadowed corners. The next morning, Sarah packed her belongings, leaving behind the chilling legacy of her inheritance. As she drove away, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She glanced back at the house, its silhouette stark against the rising sun. A shiver ran down her spine. In the attic window, a single doll sat perched on the edge, its porcelain face expressionless, its painted eyes fixed on her departing figure. Even from this distance, she could have sworn she saw a flicker of malice in their depths, a silent promise that this wasn't over. The house, she knew, would always hold its secrets, and the dolls would be waiting.